In 2005, a single customer walked into the MGM Grand in Las Vegas and proceeded to spend $162 million across just 3 years. His name was Ausaf Umar Siddiqui, and he wasn't some trust fund billionaire or tech mogul. He was a Fry's Electronics executive making $225,000 a year who had figured out the most expensive way possible to pay off gambling debts. Born in 1965, Omar Siddiqui began his career at Fry's Electronics in 1988, just 3 years after the electronics retailer was founded. Starting as a computer salesman, he possessed what colleagues described as a strong ability to persuade, and carried himself as a confident individual, a business person with acumen. By 2003, this persuasive power had catapulted him to vice president of merchandising and operations, overseeing all purchasing decisions for the company's 34 stores and supervising 120 employees. But Omar had developed a problem that his $225,000 salary couldn't support. Somewhere along the way, the ambitious executive had discovered the intoxicating world of high-stakes gambling, and by the mid-2000s, he wasn't just playing, he was hemorrhaging money at a rate that defied logic. The casinos loved him, why wouldn't they? Here was a well-dressed, articulate businessman who bet $200,000 per hand at Blackjack, played with machine-like speed, and never seemed to run out of money. To them, Omar Siddiqui wasn't a person with a problem. He was a golden goose that needed to be pampered, coddled, and kept happy at all costs. And pamper him, they did. The Venetian gave him a 7,000 square foot chairman's suite, complete with a fountain by the front door. 26 television screens throughout the suite ensured he never missed a moment of ESPN or Ultimate Fighting Championship matches, but it was the details that revealed just how far the casinos would go to keep their whales swimming in their waters. Omar's guest profile, a 7-page document detailing his every preference and quirk, read like the demands of a deranged dictator. Fiji water arranged in groups of 3, golden raisins and warmed mixed nuts, Aramis cologne and badger hair shaving brushes, Dom Perignon, rose champagne, and Kurosawa sake chilled and ready. The maids knew to scatter bowls of glitterati mentissimo peppermints throughout his suite, each adorned with a single rose. White vases were forbidden. Bad luck, apparently. His closet became a museum of obsessive organization. Socks had to be 70% silk and 30% cotton. His jeans required dry cleaning. Starch and creasing were absolutely prohibited. Shoes were polished and returned, with laces tied, and wooden inserts replaced. And God help the hotel employee who approached him from behind. That was grounds for immediate dismissal from his presence. The shopping lists read like a wealthy man's fever dream. Philips Norelco body groom shavers, Sonicare Elite toothbrushes, Clinique facial scrub, and Trojan Magnum condoms. Hotel employees scrambled between Saks Fifth Avenue, Nordstrom, and even Target to fulfill his demands. For breakfast, it was Earl Grey tea with exactly 4 packets of sugar and 3/4 teaspoon cream, 3 eggs over easy, hash browns, sourdough toast, and a precise arrangement of papaya, mango, and pineapple. But here's where the story gets truly disturbing. Omar never drank while gambling. The casino stocked his suite with Grey Goose, Crown Royal, Johnny Walker Black, Dom Perignon, and expensive cognac. But at the tables, he was stone cold sober. This wasn't some drunken businessman making bad decisions. This was calculated, methodical destruction. The butler notes were particularly revealing. No one is to enter the suite unescorted or unannounced except the butler assigned. When Omar entertained, the butler will need to maintain a presence, if not in the room, then in the pantry with the door open so requests can be heard. They knew when to disappear too. He will dismiss you by requesting privacy. He will be very direct with this request. Leave until he contacts you. These weren't the whims of a successful businessman unwinding after a hard week. These were the demands of a man whose entire identity had become wrapped up in being treated like royalty by people who were systematically bleeding him dry. Because that's exactly what was happening between 2005 and 2008. The IRS tracked $167.8 million that flowed through Omar's secret company, PC International. But where was this money coming from? A man making $225,000 a year doesn't have $167 million lying around. The answer lay in Omar's position at Fry's Electronics and the elaborate scheme he'd constructed to fund his addiction. As vice president of merchandising, Omar controlled which products appeared on Fry's shelves. He convinced company executives that eliminating sales representatives would save money. He'd act as the middleman himself. The scheme was breathtakingly simple. Vendors like Phoebe Micro Inc., which sold $80 million worth of goods to Fry's between 2003 and 2008, would give Fry's a $4 million discount while secretly paying Omar's company $24 million. Everyone got what they wanted. Fry's got their discount, vendors got guaranteed shelf space, and Omar got his casino money. The IRS documented 6 instances where Omar received between $1 million and $5 million from vendors, then paid nearly identical amounts to casinos within 1 to 3 days. This wasn't a businessman with a gambling problem, this was a gambling addict with a business problem, using his corporate position to systematically fund his addiction. Some vendors tried to resist. Fastmac, a small Santa Clara battery manufacturer, sent representatives to pitch their superior Apple computer batteries to Omar in 2006. Instead of discussing product quality, Omar tossed their battery onto a credenza and launched into his sales pitch. $20,000 for prominent advertising placement and favorable shelf space. Instead of us trying to sell our product, it turned to him selling us on why we should pay him, recalled Abi Vakil, now the company's vice president. It was very weird. I could have been selling anything. It didn't make any difference to him. Vakil refused the deal. Fry's never stocked Fastmac batteries. He was straight out of GQ magazine, Vakil remembered. He was just oozing arrogance. But arrogance couldn't mask the mathematical reality of Omar's situation. Even with tens of millions in kickbacks, he was losing faster than he could steal. The casinos, meanwhile, were doing everything in their power to keep him playing. Despite his record of debts, in 2004, the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas gave him $1 million in credit. He played blackjack and hit a losing streak. But when he bet his last $50,000, his luck turned. He ended up winning back the million and more. He took his few million and walked out and used the money to pay back another casino. In another instance, in November 2007, Siddiqui walked into Planet Hollywood, wrote out a $3 million check for chips, and sat down to play Baccarat, bypassing the beautiful blackjack dealers in lingerie in the pleasure pit. Omar sure loved his pleasure, and the casino knew this. His luck ran out, and he wrote another $5 million check. Within hours, he lost his entire stake. When Planet Hollywood tried to collect, Siddiqui's checks bounced. This willful ignorance was the industry's standard operating procedure. They built detailed psychological profiles of their whales, tracked every preference and quirk, but claimed complete ignorance about where the money originated. They knew Omar was losing $8 million in single sessions, knew he had markers all over town, knew he was jumping between casinos to pay off debts with winnings from other venues, and they kept the credit flowing. The House of Cards finally collapsed in October 2008. A Fry's employee walked into Omar's unoccupied office and found spreadsheets detailing millions of dollars in secret vendor payments. Instead of confronting Omar, the employee gathered the documents and contacted the IRS. On December 19, 2008, 24 federal agents descended on Fry's corporate headquarters. They walked Omar out in handcuffs while stunned coworkers watched their vice president disappear forever. The man who had been treated like royalty in Las Vegas was now wearing the bright orange uniform of the Santa Clara County Jail. The criminal complaint painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning years. Omar had convinced Fry's management to eliminate traditional vendor representatives, positioning himself as the cost-saving middleman. Instead, he created PC International, a fraudulent company whose sole purpose was receiving kickbacks, and began charging commissions that would have made a loan shark blush. At his arraignment, Omar stood silent in his jail-issued orange shirt, the designer suits and meticulous grooming replaced by the standard issue appearance of the accused, U.S. District Court Judge Richard Seaborg set bail at $300,000 and imposed a condition that must have felt like the ultimate punishment. Nevada was off limits. "I know you do a great deal of travel to Las Vegas," Seaborg noted. "That's not allowed anymore. Nevada is off limits. No more private jets, no more chairman suites, no more butlers arranging his golden raisins in groups of 3. The scope of Umar's addiction became clearer during legal proceedings. Court records revealed that 7 casinos had sued him since 1999, seeking to recover at least $33 million. In 2003, Clark County prosecutors had pursued him for $12 million in gambling debts. The IRS had slapped an $18.5 million tax lien on his property in 2006. The state added a $3 million lien in 2007. Despite all these red flags, the lawsuits, the liens, the unpaid markers, the casinos continued extending credit. They were trapped in their own logic. If they cut off a whale, he might swim to a competitor's waters. Better to keep him gambling and hope he hit a winning streak that would pay everyone back. By 2009, as Umar's case moved through the courts, the full extent of the damage became apparent. Court records indicated he had gambled away as much as $167 million over the previous decade. At just 2 casinos, MGM Grand and the Venetian, he had spent $162 million in 3 years. His annual salary could have funded maybe 6 months of his gambling habit. The math was devastating and undeniable. Umar had created one of the most efficient money laundering operations in corporate fraud history, using his position at Fry's to systematically convert vendor kickbacks into casino chips. The vendors got their shelf space, the casinos got their action, and Umar got to maintain the illusion that he was a successful businessman rather than a desperate addict stealing millions to fund his habit. In February 2010, facing 30 years in prison on 9 felony counts, Umar finally pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of money laundering. His attorney, Paul Meltzer, painted him as a victim of his own addiction. He said Mr. Siddiqui's crimes were not caused by greed or criminal disposition, but out of desperation due to the enormous debts that resulted from his gambling addiction. The defense blamed the casinos for enabling the addiction. According to court filings, Umar's first credit line was $50,000, which quickly jumped to $1 million, then escalated to multiple lines totaling $30 million. The casinos fed the addiction, Meltzer wrote, by lavishing him with free wine, gourmet meals, hotel suites, and private jets. But the most damning detail was this. Umar didn't enjoy any of it. To the contrary, it became increasingly stressful as he found himself deeper in debt to the casinos with no way out other than to hope for a successful gambling weekend. The luxury suites, the Dom Perignon, the butler service, none of it brought pleasure. It had become work, a desperate performance to maintain access to the credit that fed his addiction. They built the trap, baited it with luxury, and then claimed surprise when their carefully cultivated whale self-destructed. The casinos kept their profits. The vendors paid their inflated commissions. Fry's lost tens of millions, and Umar lost everything: his career, his freedom, his future, and any chance of the respect he had so desperately sought in those gilded cages of Las Vegas. In the end, the house always wins. As always, remember to be stingy when gambling.